Hey YouTube, it's Theban Gamer here, and welcome to this guide on how to create a balanced army on Broken Arrow. So here we have the open beta, and in this video we're going to be doing a balanced army for the Russians. We're going to be doing an army that's good for defense, good for offense, can handle multiple different types of threats, and it's very effective on the battlefield. So let's get into the guide. The first thing we're going to do in the beta is create a battle group. Now for the Russians, you have two specializations available in the beta, so you have to keep in mind that the final game I believe will have 6 on each side. So right now you have the VDV and you have the Guards Tank Brigade here, and that's going to give you units again from the airborne and from tank units. So let's get into the actual deck builder. So as you can see here, you have your 6 categories, right, and they're each important in their own way. Broken Arrow is a little bit different in the fact that every category has a specific number of points available, and they all add up to the total amount, which is 10,000 points. So it's very important that in each category you learn what units do, so you can create a balanced army that can both attack and defend, because every game is different and you need to have an army with many different capabilities. So if we go into the recon tab, again, I'm not going to go over every unit, we're just going to go over broad categories. Here if you look, our first 3 lines are recon infantry. So Razvedka are basically just regular infantry, which is better sight. The snipers over here, they're very great because they have great sight but also great stealth and good range. And the VDV Spetsnaz, which is actually one of the best units in the game in my opinion, because you can equip them with either thermobaric or a Metis ATGM, giving them a lot of range, and they also have a 2,000 meter sight range, so they are very deadly, very stealthy, and they're very good to use in the game. So that's basically for the infantry. And then below it we have recon vehicles, and these vehicles basically have increased sight over the regular vehicles. Some of them, for example this Sarmat, you can actually put an Metis ATGM, and you can make it a anti-tank hunter if you want, sort of hide it in bushes and stuff like that. The T90M Nakida, right, this one basically has better sight lines, and you can even add more optics to it. But this is going to be useful if you're trying to lead a tank charge and you want to have one tank with great vision. So very useful for recon tank. Now the drones here, they're actually not done very well in Broken Arrow, because if you look, their sightline is not really that much better than the recon infantry. So 2,000 points for this Orion, and then 2,000 points for this 4-post drone, or 2,000 meters in terms of sight. That's not that far, and they're going to get shot down extremely easily because they go extremely slowly. They're in the air and they really can't maneuver, to be honest, and they just get shot down by everything. So they're not really that useful, and for this build I'd actually just recommend not using them. Now in the future they could update them, give them longer range of sight, stuff like that, but for now I just recommend just sort of ignoring them because they're not really that useful. So what are we going to do right now? So let's start with the infantry. And again, as you play, you're going to learn that you can substitute different vehicles and different things, but for right now we're going to choose the VDV Razvedka. We're going to choose the sniper units, and then we're going to choose a Spetsnaz unit. So that's giving us different levels of infantry for these units. So these units, if they had better carriers, you could potentially carry less vehicles with you. So what that means is, in one vehicle, if it has enough space, you can fit multiple units. But in this case, we're just going to keep it simple. We're just going to use the BMD2. One thing I am going to do with these BMD2s is I'm going to put an ATGM on them because it's very cheap, and there's no real reason not to. For 10 points, you can just get great capabilities for that. And then right here, I also want a recon ability that's more mobile than what I have now, and that's why I'm going to bring one of these Sarmats, and I'm going to equip the Sarmat with a Metis ATGM. So what this is this basically creates a tank hunter with good mobility. You can hide it in the bushes in the opening stage of the game and take out some vehicles. So these are sort of the units I want to take. I'm not really going to take the T90M just because it's very expensive in the game, so it's not necessarily the best. It doesn't even come with trophy active protection or Afghanet for the Russians, so I'm not really going to take the T90M just for that case. But again, if you're running an armor heavy army, you do want to take the T90M with the recon package, because it helps you be more mobile in those situations. So right now, again, now the big choice is how much of each am I going to take, right? So here it just depends on my needs. I'd recommend taking, let's say, at least 3 regular infantry, and I'm going to put them all on BMD2s. Snipers, let's just do 2 snipers, just because that's how much I use them. And then VDV Spetsnaz, I'm going to see if I can fit 4 in there. Sarmats, I'm going to do probably 2 Sarmats. And now I have points left over. So for points left over, I'm probably going to put him just in the Razvedka. And let me see, I think I can do, so I think that's good for now. Again, you don't have to max out every category, but if you look, again, I have good recon infantry, right, with the sniper, ATGM teams, and regular recon infantry, and then I have mobile recon right here. Again, if your needs are going to change, you're going to get better at certain things. You can also make these units airborne, so if I wanted to, I could put an airborne transport, but you can also just use the regular BMDs. So in this case, I'm just going to keep it simple and just use the BMDs. Infantry. This is a pretty important tab. So infantry have many capabilities in Broken Arrow, and the capabilities are above and beyond what you would see in regular RTSs, right? They do a lot of different things. One of them is going to be just your regular line infantry. These guys are going to have a little bit more health. They're going to have good assault rifles, good grenade launchers, good machine guns, and some RPG capability. If you look, they only come with 4 RPGs, so they're not necessarily that great as tank hunters. They do have a lot of penetration, but again, infantry are really best for storming positions and then holding positions against other infantry, but they're not really that great against vehicles in this game. So that's going to be a little bit different than maybe what people are used to, but again, they're still very important in that sense. If we keep just looking down just to see what the different types of infantry are, you have your Stinger infantry. These guys are really good. They have really good range as well, and they can definitely take down helicopters pretty well. These guys have, for example, 2 man pads in a single squad, which means they're pretty deadly against helicopters. Grenade launcher, self-explanatory. You have your airborne infantry. These guys can actually be pair-dropped. So in the opening stage of the game, if you want to pair-drop them and sort of get on the capture points first, they're very useful. But the downside of the airborne infantry is if you look, they only have 5 men in the squad. That's really horrible, guys. That's absolutely horrible, because it's just not enough. It's just not enough health for the units. So I've seen these guys get taken out. A single tank shell takes out 4 of them, and the unit is basically combat ineffective. So that's something to watch out for. A special unit the Russians have is they have the VDV Cornet. What this is basically it's their anti-tank team with some riflemen in there. Very, very effective. What I recommend for this beta is upgrade to the Cornet M, because the Cornet M is basically going to penetrate the American tanks a lot better, just because they have so much armor in the front. So the Cornet M, I definitely recommend you upgrade to that. This is a very useful tank hunting unit, and it's very good on defense. The VDV Metis, these guys are basically sort of a defensive unit, but a jack of all trades. They have a cord HMG, which is great if you're trying to hold buildings, and then they have a Metis as well, which it has like a 1,100 meter range and good penetration. So these guys are also very good for defense. So you have a variety of units here. And again, I went a little bit more in depth than what you really need to know. But what you really need to know is you want sort of infantry that can both attack and defend, right? So if we look at our attacking infantry, that's going to be our regular mortar strelky right here. And for them, I'm going to want to take the Kurganets. Now, some people like the boomerang if you want more mobility, but I really don't want to pay more for a unit that has less armor. So for myself, I'm going to take the Kurganets. One thing you absolutely do want to put on your units is you want to put the active protection systems, because that is absolutely going to save them in this game. Missiles are so deadly in this game. RPGs are insanely deadly, so putting active protection is going to be great. So if I put this F1 here, they're going to have four defensive shots against RPGs and anti-tank missiles. That's going to keep these alive a lot longer. Now, in this case, because these guys are assault infantry, I'm also going to put an IFV, basically module on here, that gives them an autocannon and an anti-tank launcher. So this is, again, one of the most effective vehicles currently in the beta. And I'm going to put 4 of these, because I definitely want basically mainline infantry. I want to have enough of them, and I want them all to be outfitted with their IFVs, just so they can support the IFVs. So now that I have that, I want my defensive infantry. So if I look here, the defensive infantry, and again, they're not strictly defensive, but they are going to help in defense in terms of just holding ground, destroying tanks. I'm going to take these anti-tank infantry, so these VDV Cornets. These are, again, one of the better units in the game. They can take out any tank on the battlefield. They're really good. And I usually take this BTRD robot, and I upgrade the robot beach ready robot with a Cornet M just for 5 points. 5 points just gives you more penetration, and I usually take 4 of these. Now I also want more defense in terms of the HMG infantry, and for that I'm going to take the VDV Metis, and I'm going to put him in a BMD2. The BMD2 is so cheap, even with an ATGM, that it just makes sense to do. So I have my defensive infantry, I have my offense, I have my defense. I would like a little bit more offensive infantry, so let's add one of these guys in here. And for this, I'm gonna put Boomerang BM module on here. I'm gonna add some one of these guys just so we have a little bit more offense. And now we want just some specialty infantry. So specialty infantry, basically I'm gonna use these anti-air infantry. These guys are pretty good. And I'll put them in the Kurganets just because it's a little bit cheaper and it has more armor. Again, it all depends on what you want. If you're the type of person who you like more mobility, you have the wheel platforms with the 100 speed. If you don't care as much and you want armor, then you have the Kurganets. So it's all personal preference. In this case, I have my offensive infantry, my defensive anti-tank infantry, and then I have my specialty, or basically anti-air infantry right here to do special tasks, right? So that's sort of how I look at a balanced army. You want infantry that can do a variety of things, and you want to have enough of them to do those things. If you go to vehicles, this is also one of the most important tabs in the game. This is going to make up a large bulk of your army. If you look at the Russians right now, they do have a little bit of a tank collection going here. If we go down, we're going to see that there's super heavy, sort of the medium tanks, and then they have basically the old tanks that are cheaper, but they're less effective. So if we look over here, we're going to see that the T-14 Armada is a super heavy tank. It also comes standard with the active protection. And for tanks, active protection is absolutely critical in this game. Tanks will not last without this, just because these anti-tank missiles are so ubiquitous that tanks just can't live on the battlefield with it. So I'm going to include a single T-14 Armada as a super heavy tank. It costs a lot to field, so it's not really worth it taking too many T-14 Armadas, just because it costs so much to field. It doesn't have any add-ons, but I am going to choose a T90M as well. This is going to be my mainstay tank, right? This is probably going to be the one I'm going to be using the most often. Why is it? Because it's so effective and it's good enough to take out other tanks. Again, for the Russians, in the beta, you don't have as many options. In the full game, you'll have more options. But you want to have a mainline tank that's your bread and butter, right? A tank that's good enough to take out other tanks and can engage other infantry. If I look here, I absolutely want to put the active protection, and I want the ERA blocks. The ERA just gives you more armor on the side, and it's very helpful. So I am going to include that, and I'm going to include 3 of these. Now I just want a volume tank, right? So I have my mainline tank, I have my super heavy tank, for breakthroughs, and now I want a cheaper mainline tank where if I get into a jam or if I have to take heavy losses, what do I fall back on? And what do I fall back on? Well, in this case, it's the T80U. You have different variants of the T80U, right? So you can choose what you want. This one has active protection. This one has more. This one has more basically optics, and then this one has a jammer, right? The T90 is also somewhat of not of a bad choice. They have the jammer standard on the T90, so they're not bad. So I'm going to choose one T80U. I'm going to choose a T90 as well, just so we can get some variety in there. Now you also have the BMP Terminator. This BMP Terminator is pretty good, but it does fall short in a couple categories. It can't really, I would say it's not really a tank hunter per se, because even though it does have these anti-tank missiles, if it gets caught in a medium engagement, it's going to get absolutely just shellacked. So the BMP Terminator is pretty good, and I think just for balance, I'll bring one. You also have this sort of light tank, this amphibious tank. This one doesn't have really basically that much armor, or any armor to be honest. So you can use this as like a support unit, but in this army I'm not going to use it. Why? Because I already have cheap tanks that are going to help me out. So I'm going to add probably just another T80U. Let's see if so that's too much. So I think this looks pretty good. So again, I have my super heavy tank for breakthroughs, my mainline tank that I'm going to use most often for attack and defense, and I have my cheap tanks that's going to back up the mainline tank. And then I have my anti-infantry vehicle, which is the BMP Terminator. Again, for the Russians, you do have this Terminator. For the US, you won't really have an anti-infantry specific vehicle like this, so just keep that in mind. All right, let's go to support. This is, again, the bread and butter of your army. So support is going to include three things. It's going to include, one, your supply vehicles. So these are going to be absolutely critical for bringing up supplies. You can also bring troops in them. Two, it's going to include your anti-air vehicles. This is going to be great for basically keeping the enemy air force at bay, for getting people to stop using their own air force, and for stopping ballistic missiles, because AA in this game can stop the larger ballistic missiles. So the attackums think about those type of missiles. It doesn't stop like Grad rockets or something like that, but it does stop the biggest missiles. And then you have your own artillery, which is tube artillery and rocket artillery. So to start off, I always do supply trucks, and I'm going to use about let's say 6 supply trucks, because that's just how much I need in the game. I do want my anti-air. So right here, the Strela 10M or MN is going to be the basically cheap anti-air over here. Along with the cheap anti-air, I'm going to want to use another basically more long-range anti-air. Some people do use this over here, which is the S300. So I will put that as my long-range anti-air. It has good range, and it's going to be able to sort of knock out those airplanes, because in Broken Arrow, another thing is that airplanes can release their bombs from much further away, so you're going to need a long-range anti-air over here. So I have my anti-air capability. Now I just want some artillery. So really the tube artillery is mostly for harassment. The artillery you really want to get is the rocket artillery. So the Grads, I'm going to take both Grads. Very, very good. And then I do want a tube artillery sort of for harassment purposes. So if I look, I have mortars, which are, again, they don't really do as much damage. And then I have the Kolitsa, which is just a heavy tube artillery. So I want more harassment mortars, so I'm going to take 2 of these. So right here, as you can see, again, we got our supply, we got our anti-air, and then we got our artillery, both mortar and rocket. And right now I'm just going to add, I guess, a couple more supply vehicles, because that never hurts. And you have a pretty balanced support class. Make sure to include all 3 categories, just so you're prepared. So helicopters. So helicopters for the Russians, they have a great selection. Probably the best one in the game, to be honest, right now in the beta. Because they have cheap helicopters, they have expensive helicopters, they have recon helicopters, they have every category of helicopter. The one that's unsung is the cargo helicopter. These are absolutely critical in the beginning of the game. I recommend bringing at least 2 cargo helicopters, because in the beginning of the game you can sort of drop your troops off beforehand, and then you can take spots in the map before the enemy gets there. So it's very, very critical. There's also the Mi-26, but to be honest, not really necessary unless you like ferrying supplies with it. Now I'm going to go to the Ka-52. This helicopter is great because it comes with great optics, so 2,400 meter range, without really any addition. And now I'm going to make one helicopter an anti-tank helicopter. So I'm going to add some anti-tank capability here. You can add Iglas as well to this helicopter. For this one, I just want it to be a tank hunter. So I'm going to add 2 of these in. Now I'm going to go to the Mi-28NM. And let me see what we have. What are our options here? So here I'm going to, again, put some rockets here. And then I'm going to choose the anti-tank and Igla systems right here. So helicopters can actually carry anti-air systems, and that'll help them take out other helicopters and even planes. And I'm going to choose that, and I'm going to include that. So basically we have one multi-purpose helicopter, and then one really specifically tank hunter helicopter here, and that makes a balanced helicopter force. Plus we have the cargo helicopter. So great options for helicopters, especially for the Russians. Air tab. So this one's probably the most complicated one, but because you just have so many things you can do. One thing is you have the IL-76, which is a great transport aircraft. You can drop troops early in the game, parachute them in. It's very, very good. It's a very, very great plane. I'm not going to use it just because it's not really how I play. I'd rather just use helicopters to drop off troops, but it's still very effective. You have your close air support, Su-34 and Su-25, And then you have your regular fighters, which can do multi-roles. So they can drop bombs, they can shoot rockets, they can do multiple things, and they're very versatile. And then you have your unique to the Russians, right? I guess the U.S. will have an AC-130, I believe, equivalent, but this bomber can actually launch long-range cruise missiles. Guys, this is absolutely insane because you can literally launch these across the map, and unless the enemy has proper air defense, they won't be able to respond to this. And look at the payloads you have: 12 massive cruise missiles, 2 9,000 kilogram bombs. Like, that's insane, guys. So these bombers are absolutely devastating, but they cost a fortune. So you gotta keep in mind, what you want, because again, the air tab, you can do many things, but you're constrained to what how many points you have available. So right now, let's go to our multi-function aircraft. I want a fighter that basically is gonna fight other fighters, right? Fight the enemy air force. So here you have a lot of options. Keep in mind cost, right? So 500 points, that's so expensive. So we got to take the cost down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to empty the fuselage, empty the inner pylon, middle pylon. I'm going to choose an anti-air missile. So these all have different strengths, but I'm going to choose the R77. Outer pylon, I'm going to choose more anti-air missiles. I'm going to choose the R73. So that's 6 anti-air missiles plus a cannon, and that's 255 points. Now I could add more, right? So if I wanted to add more anti-air missiles, I could definitely do that. But you got to keep in mind the cost. You don't really get that many points where you can just add infinite amounts of missiles. So I'm going to add 2 of these fighters. Now I want a close air support. So here I have the Su-25, Su-34. I'm going to choose the Su-25 just because it's a little bit more versatile and it's cheaper, and that's the main thing. And I'm going to make this a dedicated tank hunter. So you already come with the Vickers missiles on these, and these are pretty good at taking out tanks. But now I got to specialize. So what do I want my Su-25 to do? Do I want him to strafe? Do I want him to do longer range bombs? What do I want? He can even do, I think, seed missions right here. So what do you want? So I'm going to choose just a strafing Su-25. So I'm going to do the rockets. Middle pylons, he has some type of bomb here. I'm going to just put more rockets. Outer pylons, we have 2 missiles for self-defense, which is fine. I'll probably upgrade the R-77s. Wingtips, we'll keep these empty just because of cost. Optics, you can add a radar, but for aircraft, probably not needed. And I'm going to add in 2 of these. So I have close air support, and then I have fighters. So I think just due to the point limitation, I'll just do 1 close air support. And then let's see, do I want airlift capability? So if I add that in, let me see, I can only get 1. Alright, so I will add in airlift capability. Let me see, can I get a really cheap fighter? Just to round out I think I can. Yeah, so and then I'll get 1 cheap air-to-air fighter. This only has 2 missiles. Let me see if I can do a little bit better than that. I can do 4 missiles. So I'll get 2 different air-to-air fighters. I get my close air support, and I have my air transport. So this is very balanced. Again, I have the ability to resupply with the Air Force. I have the ability to fight other air forces, so fight other fighters, and I have the ability for close air support. So this is, again, a very balanced reason. So again, why do I talk about balance? Well, in Broken Arrow, you're going to meet all types of builds, right? People are going to have different builds that do different things, such as anti-armor. They're going to have heavy infantry builds, airborne builds, all these builds. If you have a balanced force, you're going to be much better at dealing with those builds. But if you build an army that can just do one thing, people are going to figure it out. They're going to counter you, and then you're going to lose the match. So as you can see here, this is a full sort of list of all the units. This is the balanced Russian army. For more Broken Arrow videos and tutorials, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you guys keep liking and subscribing, I will keep making more of these videos. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.